Jealousy is an emotion, and the word typically refers to the thoughts and feelings of insecurity, fear, concern, and anxiety over an anticipated loss of status or something of great personal value, particularly in reference to a human connection. We've all experienced this emotion in our lives. In some cases, it costs us our china, and in other instances, sleepless nights. Well, human behavior specialist Dr. John Demartini is here in studio to help us make better sense of jealousy. Can we make sense of jealousy? I'm asking myself this question. I'm not in the habit of breaking my china, but it certainly, does inhibit us in our relationships, especially.
Well, jealousy, you don't have a fear of loss unless you're infatuated with something, unless you're attached to something or envy something. So there is a relationship between envy and jealousy. They're not the same, but there's a relationship. For instance, if you meet a gentleman that you fancy and you really want that gentleman, you think this is the one, this is that special one. And all of a sudden you see his eye wandering over somebody that you think you would have difficulty competing with. Mm-hmm. You'll be jealous. Now, if you see a 95 or 100-year-old woman eyeing him, you'll probably get a kick out of it. You won't be jealous. But if you see somebody that you think has some behavioral trait or skill or talent or contribution to that man that you don't know if you can compete with, up comes jealousy and the desire to want to cut them down, to stand out, to not lose what it is that you envy and want to have. So it is a biological response to our perceptions whenever we envy something and put something on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. Let me give an example. Imagine if you're with a guy that you've dated for a long period of time, and now you resent the guy, and you said, this is over. You haven't found a placement yet, so you're just riding it out until you find a replacement, but you know it's not going to be. And all of a sudden somebody looks at them, and they're eyeing him. You're not jealous of that. You're not frightened of that because you don't have a desire to hold on to that. You know that if they do, good. They can have the problems now. Yeah. So you only have jealousy when you put when you put a value on something that you fear the loss of. Now you have jealousy. Mm-hmm. So it's all perception that creates it. Every one of our emotions have the chemistry of emotions. Right now there's sort of a movement that all emotions are chemical, and that the chemistries are in balance, and that's why you have these emotions, et cetera. Mm-hmm. That's only partly true. That's true in the sense that that's going on, but that's not the cause necessarily. Because with every ratio of perceptions, our chemistries are changing. Yeah. They're moving around. If I come up to you and told you that you're off the air, you're never going to get to do another interview, your career is dud, it's over. And I will make sure you will never do that career again. And wherever you go in the world, I'm going to stop you from doing it.
I say, go ahead and try.
Okay. Well, your testosterone would come up.
Immediately.
Your norepinephrine, your epinephrine, your blood sugar would go up, your lipids would go up, your aggressive tension would go up, your hands would tighten up, your jaw would tighten up. There was certain physiological...
You're ready for battle.
You're ready for battle.
Because you want to challenge his position as well.
Okay. Now, if you believe that you can conquer that person, you'll fight him. Yeah. If you believe there's no way you're going to be able to do it, you'll fight him. And if neither of those are available to you, you'll go into a freeze response and act dead. The freeze response causes a dissociation to survive these challenges. Sure. In those challenging moments, your chemistry will go into a certain portion, and that chemistry can change. I use the analogy of, I tell people in my Breakthrough Experience program that if all of a sudden that door opened and a giant tiger leaped in the air and came and with its mouth open and its fangs and is about to eat your head, and you're sitting there going, you turn and you see this tiger just about to eat you. If I was to take a Men in Black pen, right, pull out a Men in Black and go boop and freeze it and quickly do a chemistry on your brain, your dopamine would be down, your estrogen would be down, your serotonin would be down, your enkephalons, endorphins, vasopressin, oxytocin would all be dropped, and cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, testosterone, histamine, and substance P in the brain would all be up in that second. And then if I did the pen and the cat, the big cat, stopped and hugged you and licked you, and he said, "I'm Tony Tiger, and I'm great."
I'll take him home with me.
And you've always dreamed about meeting Tony Tiger, and you since childhood, this is your hero, Tony Tiger. And you know, you ate your Frosted Flakes, and now he's your friend. Immediately, if we did the pin, we froze him, and we did a chemistry, the chemistry would be completely reversed. Chemistries change based on the ratio of perceptions. So if we are infatuated with something and attached to something, the stronger the infatuation and attachment, the greater the fear of loss. And so you can't have jealousy without a fear of loss.
Sure.
And you can't have that without some sort of envying of somebody that can compete with that. So if you see somebody, the wisest thing I know to do is to stop and ask, what specifically is the behavioral trait that this person displays that I think they have that I don't? Are they more attractive? Are they more intelligent? Can they communicate more effectively? Are they more socially skilled? Are they going to help them in the person's business better? Are they wealthier? What is it that I feel that they have that I don't? And then ask, where do I have that in my own form? Where do I have those traits in my own form? And keep asking that until you can see you have it to the same degree. And once you see it to the same degree, you have no fear of them competing.
Sure.
And you don't have a jealousy. I worked with a lady who was 56 years old in Minneapolis, whose husband started having an affair with a 39-year-old. And she was angry and attacking him and doing everything to push him further away. And I stopped and I said, if you continue this behavior, she's going to get your husband. And you're afraid of being on your own. Even though you might get some assets from a divorce, you're afraid of being on your own without him because your identity is wrapped around who he is, and you still have him on a pedestal. So I had her go and do, and what is it that he has that you fear you don't have? And what is it this girl has that you fear you don't have? And I made her look and find it. And I spent about 2 hours going through that exercise. Whatever you perceive in her, where do you have it in your own form? As we did that, she all of a sudden calmed down and she realized he'd be really foolish to go after that. If he goes, he's going to find out what I have is a greater service, and I'm not frightened about it, and I'm not jealous of her anymore. And completely changed the field. Sure. And she sat with him and said, okay, right now you're upset with your company, you're beating yourself up, you're not feeling great about yourself, you're needing somebody to look up to you. This girl is looking up to you, she's an underdog looking up to you. If you were to divorce me, you take your fortune and cut it in half. You go with her, you risk it cutting in a quarter. If you need to do that to learn your lesson, I honor that. Just know I love you, but this is obviously a lesson you want to go through. And played it completely different, made him stop and reflect that night. He dumped the girl. And she re-empowered herself, didn't have that fear. Because she was assuming that this girl had something she didn't.
Yeah.
And therefore she was jealous.
Sure.
And envious. And frightened. Once she reclaimed where her power was and what she had that was equal, she didn't have that experience at all.
When we experience jealousy, that feeling renders us vulnerable. So the question is, what should the partner do to assist the one that's going through the jealousy?
Well, they can sit down and assure them. They can say, I love you. They can assure that. They can define what behaviors they're doing that's leading to that result, to see if they are unaware of what they're doing that's triggering it. Because sometimes they're doing it not even realizing they're doing something that is triggering it. But ultimately, the person that's got a jealousy has got a wound back there. And there's a fear of loss of something in that wound. And sometimes going back and clearing that wound is part of it. But sometimes also realizing that they're minimizing themselves to somebody else. If somebody comes along, I have a funny story. I had a 94-year-old woman that asked me to take her to a theater one night in front of my wife. And I turned to my wife and I said, do you mind if I take this woman to the theater? And she looked at the woman, she says, absolutely not, go, enjoy. So I took the woman to the theater. I didn't know that she picked up 2 other guys. 3 guys took her to the theater. She picked up 3 guys. I felt like, you know, I wasn't special all of a sudden. But my wife had no fear whatsoever about me going out with this 94-year-old woman to a theater. There was no threat, because she didn't perceive that she had anything that was going to threaten her. But my wife also had a moment when I had the Duchess of Majorca all of a sudden come in wanting to have personal conversation and came up to me and asked if she could speak with me privately without my wife. And I watched my wife grow nails. And I watched a response.
Yeah.
Now, I was not interested in this other lady, but I watched her have a perception of competition all of a sudden.
But women are territorial, Dr. Demartini.
They're only territorial to something they're threatened that they can have a loss of.
So it's not the animal in us, you know, the
It is the
feline
animal.
in us.
It is the animal inside
Is
us.
it?
It is. And also, I'm going to say something that's probably controversial in here. I've noticed a pattern that a woman, I had this woman who was angry at this man for having an affair. I've seen it both ways. I've seen men angry with women having an affair because they have affairs just as much. But I saw this woman angry at her husband for having an affair. And again, threatened by the jealousy. But when she got her husband, that was an affair from a first wife.
Okay.
So she actually was this other girl previous 7 years earlier.
That's interesting.
And she was angry for him making love with this woman, the new girl. But she wasn't angry with him making love with his first wife for 8 months before he left his wife.
Yeah.
Because she didn't feel ownership yet. The second she felt I closed the knot,
Yeah.
and I have now ownership, now she was jealous and frightened and angry about the affair, even though she was once the affair.
Yeah.
And what we found is inside her, she was storing guilt for undermining a marriage. And this was reminding her of that.
Yeah.
And she was self-depreciating.
She was reliving that.
She's reliving that. So what we did is we cleared the guilt and shame, because the truth is one person doesn't come along and take away somebody from a marriage. There's something going on in the dynamic that's not fulfilling or they wouldn't be going on. And I cleared the shame and guilt on that. The second the shame and guilt was on, she wasn't frightened of this girl. And then we went in and found out what this girl had and found out where she had it in her own form, equal. No anxiety.
So coming back to what you were saying
Reclaim
earlier
the power.
about your wife growing nails in that incident, how did you handle it? Did you put her through that exercise as well?
I did, but it only lasted just for seconds.
Yeah.
And she saw that immediate response. I put my arms around her and I just held her in front of the woman.
That is awesome, and I think that's
held
the
her.
best response you can give
I just
to
held her
somebody
in my
that's going
arms,
through that emotion.
And I held her and I kissed her on the cheek
Yeah.
and then kissed her on the lips. And I said, there's nobody in my life that can replace you.
I think that is just super awesome.
So don't even think
That is super awesome
that
and
I'm not.
amazing
And the
to
lady
do that.
sat there and the whole power game shifted right there on the spot. Because she was normally, as part royalty, she was normally expecting people would just suck up to her. And that was the perfect thing to humble her and to empower
And
my
you
wife
need
at
that
that
kind
point.
of reassurance if you're in an intimate
In that particular situation, that's what I
relationship as well.
did.
And I think that is an awesome response. And the reason I ask that is also because in some societies, you know, it's like you're considered weak if you're jealous. And there's a stigma attached to people that express jealousy as well. Sometimes maybe you just need a little bit of reassurance.
Well, I think in my wife's case, that's the only time I saw her in the whole time we were together before she passed away. That's the only time I saw her even remotely having that. She was a very empowered woman.
That is awesome, yeah.
But she subordinated to the royal perception. That was it. And once that was cleared,
Yeah.
and the lady was humbled right in front of her,
I get it.
I wasn't enamored with the royalty, but she had a little bit of that in her thinking, that this lady had more power. That was cleared in seconds. So it's the second we subordinate to somebody else that is competing with what we want, we can initiate that reaction to let us know that we're minimizing ourselves and not honoring the form in which we see that in ourselves.
Or maybe we're just looking for a little validation.
Well, that's great. But if we get the validation without the insight, we're going to catalyze an emotional reaction
Sure.
repeatedly because we're getting rewarded for that emotional reaction. We need that reinforcement, but we also need to gain the insight to why we're having that reaction.
We need to be
We need
personally
both.
empowered.
We need both.
We need to overcome that.
We need
Find
to,
ways
we need to
overcome.
learn from that what it's really representing and grow from it.
Very insightful discussion.
Thank you.
I'm definitely wiser about jealousy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.